Miss Venable here, bringing you a presentation today on nomenclature. Nomenclature is the naming of compounds. And we're going to focus on a binary ionic compound that has actually a poor metal, but it could be a transition metal. And you're going to need to use a Roman numeral when you write the name of this one. So let's get started. So the example we're going to do today is PB2S3. And if we take a look at step one says to capitalize and name the cation. So the cation is always written first. And if I look on my periodic table, I have monatomic ions, right? Because this is a binary ionic, so it's only going to have two monatomic ions. So for my metal cation, I have to find PB. And PB is right here on the periodic table. It is in group 14, and it's kind of underneath this stair-step line, which means it's what we call a post-transition metal, or I like to call them poor metals. So anytime you have a metal cation that is a transition metal, so groups 3 through 12, or one of these here at the bottom, like lead or tin in particular, you're going to need to include a little bit more information. So let's look at step 2. It says if the cation is a transition or a poor metal, you're going to add a Roman numeral in parentheses to show how many valence electrons it has. Now, you don't know how many valence electrons it has because it has a variable oxidation state. That's the whole thing with these transition metals and these poor metals is you never know how many valence electrons they have. So you have to do a little background work. So you have to, in your mind, uncrisscross. Remember to write the formula. What they did was they took the number of valence electrons for the lead and they crossed it down to the sulfur. And then they took the number of valence electrons, or the charge, for the sulfur, and they crossed it down for the lead. So you got to undo that. So when I undo that, I can see that lead must have had a charge of 3+, and that means that it transferred 3 valence electrons to sulfur. So that's my Roman numeral. You just uncrisscross. So I'm going to put the Roman numeral 3 here, and right after the name of the lead, we must include that Roman numeral to tell us how many valence electrons that metal ion had. So step 3, we're going to capitalize and name the anion. So my anion here is an S, and if I look on my periodic table, S is a nonmetal, and it is over here in group 16. It is sulfur. So I write the name sulfur. If the anion is monatomic, it says change the suffix to I. So is our anion monatomic? Well, yes, it is, because it's just sulfur. It's here on the periodic table. If it were polyatomic, it would have more than just S. It would have 2 elements, and it would be on our list of polyatomic ions here. But I just have a monatomic ion on the periodic table, so I need to take the root sulf and change the suffix to "ide." So my final answer is lead 3 sulfide. And that's how you write the name of a binary ionic compound that has a transition or a poor metal. Thanks for joining me.